Hello again, and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting from the Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is all about guns, related political issues, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on our website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin. It is on our website at firedupwithboberwin.com and appears on YouTube and numerous other media. Every day I get a call from somebody who saw the show someplace where I don't even know we were on. We're running a little behind today, I got to tell you, because we normally would broadcast this show at 5 o'clock, but we had a surprise visit in Las Vegas from snow today, and it snowed at my house, which is about a mile from our studio here, about 3.5 inches in my backyard, and it literally shut down the whole of Las Vegas. Cable went out, our DirecTV connects went out. We were all of a sudden living in the dark ages.
We actually had to talk to each other.
Yeah. Everything went down at once. It just shut down all the electronics. Power went out all over the place. And you imagine dishes that are set up for satellite and whatever that have not set up for getting snowed on. And it just, everything went to pieces. Anyway, we are here in Las Vegas. We always start out with some stories about firearms use and so forth. This show is a little bit different. We're going to talk about gun laws that are being proposed now that are a real problem upcoming for voters in Nevada. We've got a lot of laws proposed from all over. Nevada is sort of becoming California. Our new legislature, our new Democrat legislature and Democrat governor and Democrat, you name it, that control our legislature with our new Democrat governor is lining up to increase gun regulation. The theory, of course, that being that will reduce crime, and there's little to point out about that other than the obvious is criminals already don't obey the law, so what the hell, but we'll get into that. My guest today is Chris Eifelt. Chris is the owner, operator, gunsmith, well, he's got a wife, he's sort of the operator, of CCS Gunsmithing here in Las Vegas. Chris, can I get you to give a little bit of background for our viewers?
I grew up in the gun business. My father was a large gun collector, and he had several friends that were master gunsmiths, and I was fortunate enough at a very early age to hang around with them, and that's where I picked up most of my knowledge. We've been here in Las Vegas since 1990. My wife actually owns the store. I work for my wife. And we've been in our current location of Sahara and Rainbow for the last 19 years. So we've been here for quite a while.
Yeah. Been kind of a fixture here. I remember, your store before I was old enough to... Last week, in their first immediate taking office, our new legislature, which has controlled both houses by the Democrats, and our Democratic governor, they passed their first bill they passed was Senate Bill 143 on a 28-13 vote, and the governor signed it. That is to a gun background check law. We had a gun background check passed by the voters a couple of years ago. It was ruled invalid because it required the FBI to do the background checks, and the FBI politely said, no, we ain't going to do that. So he's amending that to a state system where the state criminal history repository, the Justice Department in the state, will run the background checks for him. It's set to go into effect on January 2nd, 2020, but they're trying to do enforcement faster than that through legislative action. The new bill mimics everything that you see in California, including the fees and so forth for background checks. It's going to make guns almost cost prohibitive for regular people to buy from gun dealers. And Chris, you know more about that than I do, but charge on here.
It's going to be a huge catch-22. It's first of all, it's going to put a lot of liability on any of the gun dealers because they're going to be responsible for the background checks. They're going to be responsible for the 4473s. They're going to be responsible for the A&D books. And basically what they want us to do is if Joe wants to sell his neighbor Bill a gun, he has to bring it to a store. He has to bring it to an FFL. And there, Bill is going to hand it over, and we're going to have to log it into our A&D book, and hopefully he's already gotten paid by Joe, and then we have to run the background check on Joe. And we're tied up for at least an hour, at least an hour for the paperwork, the logging it in, the logging it out, calling it in. Point of sales is usually, it takes you 10 minutes to do the background check, but it takes you 20 minutes to get a hold of somebody.
Right.
Now, if this is going to be on everybody that's doing a private party sale, they're going to have to hire a lot of new people, and it's going to be a lot more money. But I don't know really that a dealer is going to be able to charge enough on a fee to cover the time that he's going to have put into this. And it's just going to be rotten all the way down.
Yeah, because you have to use people that know what they're doing, and you're stuck on the phone. When I was a year and a half ago, when I was running the gun store on Tropicana, we had the same problem, and people would come in and go, okay, I'm transferring the gun to Fred. He's already paid for the gun. Here's the gun. And the seller would walk out the door.
Yeah.
And then all is well, except now it turns out the buyer is prohibited or he's delayed for some reason, or the gun's hot, although it's really not hot. It's a misread serial number somewhere in the system. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about that for just a second. Of the delays and declines that we would get, and Chris, I don't know how your numbers work, but looking back, we got at the gun store about 4% of the buyers, the people that are buying the gun or getting the gun transferred to them from us or from a third party, were delayed or denied. Mm-hmm. About 4%, about 4 out of 100. Yep. And as time went on and they looked to eliminate similar names, they looked to eliminate similar dates of birth, similar Social Security numbers, if they wanted to give their Social Security number. About 90% of those eventually were approved and got their gun.
Yeah.
So 90% of the people put on delay or deny, it's wrong because the data in the system isn't clear.
Yeah.
And the problem now is then he can't get the gun. I'm going to just rant here for a minute. In the old days, going back 10 years before all this crap, we could, somebody come in, they need a gun for personal protection, a credible threat, ex-girlfriend being threatened by her ex-boyfriend, or a wife being threatened by her ex-husband or whatever, or somebody who needed a gun for work that couldn't do our 3-day waiting period back then. Mm-hmm. They needed the gun. Today, we could call at that moment any LVMPD in my jurisdiction sergeant, any of them who are on duty or off duty, and run the guy, say, look, this guy wants to buy a gun, this lady needs a gun, the guy tried to break in last night, it was ex-boyfriend, scared her to death, she needs a gun. And that sergeant would run her background right there on his computer and say, okay, release the gun on my approval, put my name on it, and we'll do the background check later. You do the blue card later or registration card later. And nothing ever happened. I mean, we could give guns to people who needed guns right then. Now we can't.
Yep.
And the lady now comes in the door and says, "I know the guy tried to break in and he tore off the screen and I screamed and he ran away, but he was back an hour later." What do? You hand her a big can of pepper spray and say, "Good luck." You say you could go to a hotel where he can't find you. I've got 3 kids, and there's all sorts of problems going on like this, and this system just sucks for keeping honest citizens from getting guns when they actually need one, but it puts them in a position where they're going to be stuck in the system for weeks or months when we know they're going to be cleared anyway in almost all cases. The real criminals who know they're going to flunk the background check don't buy at dealers. They don't do background checks.
Nope.
They steal them from you people who went through the background check to get the gun. Okay, go ahead. I'll shut up now.
But now I am absolutely positive, because this law is going to go into effect and the governor is backing it, that all of those nasty people that are stealing firearms will all bring them down to the stores and do a background check on them. They have to. I mean, it's the law. They're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
And if you believe that, I've got a bridge for you for sale.
When I was living in LA years ago, when they had their first assault weapon ban in California, I was interviewed on, I was doing gun work then too, I was interviewed on a radio station. And a reporter asked how that's working, and I said, well, it's working great. There was a line around Parker Center, that's the main LAPD office building in downtown LA. There was a line around Parker Center of gangbangers turning in their assault rifles. And the guy said, really? Do you have any pictures? I said, no. The bad guys didn't really turn in their guns.
No.
Bad guys aren't going to obey the law. Anyway, we're headed for a disaster with that at some point. So
what's going to happen is people are going to get hurt, people are going to get killed, and then they're going to say, well, but if we could have just saved one life, it was worth it.
I did an interview with a district attorney in a large county in southern Nevada some years ago. He was attempting to get me to back his restriction on gun magazines he was floating at the time. And he came up with that line, if it'll save one life. And I said, sir, if we put the speed limit in the state of Nevada at 15 miles an hour, we would save hundreds of lives every day. And he looked at me and he said, but that would interfere with commerce. We're just on the wrong page. If it's a gun, it's bad. If it's anything else, it's good. We're in about 10 minutes here. I'm going to take a break real quick for a couple of commercials. Please stand by and don't go away.
My name is Jerry Creed, and I'm a gun trust attorney. If you want to own an NFA firearm, a gun trust is a great way to own it because it allows multiple people to lawfully possess a firearm instead of just a single individual. I have reviewed lots of gun trusts, and I have found they often don't include the forms you need to bring people on as trustees and remove them as trustees. In addition, a gun trust will save you the cost of probate and avoid probate, and it can protect your executor and family members. You know, there isn't an element of intent in these laws that affect the NFA firearm possession. So it doesn't matter if your wife didn't intend to sell the gun at a garage sale or yard sale, or your daughter didn't intend to drive the car with the silencer in the trunk. A gun trust is a great way to protect your family members and friends and share in the fun and pleasure of owning NFA weapons. If you want a gun trust done right, remember to trust Jerry.
Hi, I'm Bob Irwin, and I get to do my own commercial. The short version is I've had 50 years experience in firearms, firearm repair, firearm design, 30,000 CCW holders I've personally taught, 20,000 security officers, etc. Taught in 28 police academies, firearms and use force. I've also appeared more than 200 times in gun-related cases in federal, state, and local court. I wrote this book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense, because it answers virtually all the questions that I get every time I talk to people, answers questions that come in the emails. It will tell you what you need to know to keep yourself out of prison if you get involved in a self-defense shooting case, keep from losing your house in a civil lawsuit. There are lots of things I've learned over these years and watched people make a lot of mistakes. This book will save you a lot. If you purchase one, read through it, I'm sure you will find it enlightening, and it'll save me a lot of time on these shows trying to explain to people what they did wrong and what they shouldn't have done and so forth and so on. So you can buy it by sending me the funds at the address below, bob@firedupmail.com, or leave a message on my phone number there, which is 702-257-1060. I will return your calls and tell you where to mail the money and so forth and so on. They're available on my website also, which is attached to this regular show. Cost is $15. I said add for postage if you live outside the immediate 50 states, and I will get it to you first class mail. Thank you for listening. This book will save you a lot of hassle. Thanks.
Moving on to our next problem. The Nevada Appeal Capitol Bureau reported on October 12th of 2017 the Nevada Democrats, if you don't already know, our newly elected Jackie Rosen, Dina Titus, Ruben Kuhn, etc., all signed the Keep America Safe Act. It said there's no single, Rosen said there's no single solution to gun violence for the massacres that occurred in Las Vegas, but restricting the rounds a weapons magazine can carry would reduce the threat. The high-capacity magazines have no purpose for hunting or self-defense. Titus said magazines endanger law enforcement, bystanders, etc., etc. You get the picture. The idea is that all the regular people will be restricted in their magazine capacity size, and they got a proposed law in there that will make any weapon that takes a magazine capable of holding more than 10 shots is itself illegal. If they can outlaw possession of the magazines, because there's been holding in a couple of the circuit courts that magazines aren't guns, so they're not protected by the Second Amendment. So they are using that as their leverage to restrict magazine capacity. So this bill is copied now, almost word for word, in both Nevada State and Clark County, or Las Vegas County legislation. So with 4 or 5 home invaders, the resident must be able to smoothly and quietly reload in the dark while the perps get all the so-called high-capacity magazines they want. I can't imagine criminals will obey the rule. My previous comment about the gangbangers turning in their assault weapons in L.A. They won't. So the trick is they will grandfather existing magazines, so they got to know who's got what magazines. This is what the problem came up in California. So you've got to register your magazines and mark them somehow, I guess engrave them or something a Mark's Law won't do. Yeah. So they know how many you have, and then they can periodically check to see if you've got less than you're supposed to have or more than you're supposed to have, God forbid. How do they find that out? You've got an AR-15 registered in California, so obviously you've got magazines for it.
It's going to be shades of Nazi Germany. You're going to have to inform on your neighbor. You're going to have to inform on your family member. That's the only way they're going to do it. And they're going to put a bounty on it that if you turn in somebody down the street because he's got high capacity magazines and you saw them, is that going to give law enforcement the right to come into the house to search for these magazines that have not been registered so far?
I would assume under normal reasonable suspicion laws, if somebody credible comes to a law enforcement officer and says, I know that Chris Eifelt over there has an AR-15 and one of them semi-automatic machine guns, you know, and it's got lots of them big banana kind of clips.
Yep.
If that account is credible, a judge will issue a search warrant.
Yep.
Yeah.
And especially if it's a friendly judge that's friendly to this
And,
type of
you
thing.
know, the judge can be conservative or not conservative, but judges are caught in a bind. And I worked as a bailiff for years, and I've begun to learn how judges think. If you're the judge and they come to you and say, well, this guy's got all these magazines and we think he's goofy and, you know, and you say, well, let's wait till he does something wrong, I won't issue a search warrant. Would you risk that if you were the judge? You're going to err on the side of safety.
Yeah.
You're going to have to. Otherwise, the judge will be run out of town when the 1 in 500 people does something wrong with it.
Yeah.
They're always going to err on the side of safety. They've got to. And they know how many wackos they're out there. Believe me, judges get threatened all the time. I can testify to that. So,
Yep.
Go ahead.
It's like, where are we going to go when law enforcement doesn't want to enact this type of law? You know, when are they going to stop and say, you know, I can't do this? Are they going to get out of law enforcement? I know there's a lot of them that have gotten out of law enforcement already for stuff like this. And, you know, there's an old saying that if we don't heed history, we are doomed to repeat history. And this has been done before. This has been done in several communist countries around the world. Obviously, we can see with Venezuela that I guess communism really doesn't work too well. When the average person down there has lost 20 pounds of weight and they stand in line to get toilet paper. I don't want to see that here in our country. But this is the type of thing. When you start disarming the citizens, then you become not a citizen. You become a subject.
Exactly.
And I don't know. I don't look good as a subject. I don't feel very good as a subject. So I much prefer being a citizen.
You know, there are some people out there who probably shouldn't have guns. We've got adjudicated lunatics. They already take their guns away. They're already covered by this.
Yep.
If they're mentally ill and da-da-da-da-da, and they've been adjudicated, a judge has reviewed the case and said this guy is a danger to himself or others, they can lock him up. Well, they used to. Now they just make street people out of them. But there needs to be a system to weed out those people. There's a lot of wackos out there, and we all know one. But there has to be some way in between that doesn't take guns away from honest citizens who need to defend themselves. Look at the murder rate in the city you live in, the crime rate, you know, it just goes on and on and on. It starts, the one basic right you have, God-given right, is to defend your life and defend your family, and you can't have a gun that holds more than 10 cartridges. They're not bullets really, folks, but you know, the terminology confuses people. If I see one more 200 bullet magazine in the newspaper, I poured 2 to 3 ammunition bullets into a magazine when they hold about 450 of them, those 40 shot things will hold about
Oh.
250 bullets.
Yeah.
They jammed a lot there.
Yes.
It's if we don't keep our Second Amendment right, no other right really matters, because you don't have the right to defend yourself and your family when you're attacked. The right to stay alive supersedes all the rest of this crap. And
Well, if you go around the world, like Australia took away most every gun. Then they got down to the point where they were, if you had a sword, they wanted to know where that was, because it became illegal to defend yourself. If somebody broke into your house and you knew martial arts and you defended yourself, you were the one going to the jail, not the guy that broke in your house.
yep, same thing in mainland China. They did that.
Same thing.
And in Japan, that happens all the time. We're going to have to kind of cut it off here, but I got to say one last thing. The Democrat Party is going to overstep their bounds this election with all this crap that's going on. The way we stop this is with ballots, so we don't end up having to defend our lives against other Americans. Vote. Register to vote. Vote for the conservative candidates. Not all Democrats are anti-gun. A lot of them are goofy in other ways, but most of them are not anti-gun, most Democrats. They own guns. They fall into the category of I'm safe with a gun, but you're not. And you have to kind of weed through that and say, well, why not me too? You know?
Yeah.
But I think they're going to overstep their bounds, and please register to vote. Get your friends to register to vote. It's important.
Yeah.
You can check out our recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains older shows that are being added from time to time. The commercials keep us on the air, so patronize our sponsors, please. Capitalism wins every time, as most of you know. We'll be back next Thursday on our website, on YouTube, at least for the moment, on the American Guns and Glory Network. When you see this show on media, please hit subscribe, and the shows will automatically come to your computer at 5 o'clock on a Thursday evening, unless it snows again in Las Vegas and everything's shut down. Check out our logo merchandise, which we now have at firedupwithboberwinstore.com. Remember, the audio portion of this is repeated on Nevada Talk Network all across Nevada, Saturdays at noon. Check out the stations on KELY1230.com. Thank you for supporting Fired Up. Thank you, Chris, for appearing.
Thank you.
And we will be back next week.